Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for checking out this video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to score your deer. I've had multiple people with us on in taxidermy business reach out and say, hey, can you score my deer? Hey, my deer's mounted, can you still score it? And I want to show you guys how to do that today. So there are a few different tools that you'll need. You'll need a tape measure. You'll need, I've got this tape measure right here just to measure a few things. I'll show you what this does and why this one kind of comes in handy. I've actually got this tape measure. You want it to read eighths too. That's important because we're going to be measuring this in eighths. So this one measures in eighths, this one measures in eighths, so you'll want to do that. You'll need, if you want a really accurate score, you're going to need a wire of some sort. This is just like a wire cable. You'll see why here in just a moment. You'll need pencil. I've got a score sheet. We score with Alabama Whitetail Records. They came and showed us how to score the way that they do their specific scoring system, and they gave us their score sheets. We've had a bazillion of these, so we just print them off. I'll show you. You can probably print something out online, but I'll show you the basics of what you'll need to write down. That way, if you don't have one of these, you can still write down on a piece of paper. That way you can add it up at the end. So those are all things that I have. What I'm going to start off with is I'm just going to lay this in front of me just like this. The reason I do that is because it helps me when I'm scoring. This is the deer's right and the deer's left. I know to you it's opposite. If it was facing me, it'd be opposite. But we're going to score using the deer's right and the deer's left. So that's how it is on this score sheet, and that's how I like to keep it. That way I don't get mixed up. So there are a few basic measurements that we're going to get that are super important when you're adding this up. And I'm going to go down the list to make sure I don't miss anything, but you're going to do this on the right and left side, okay? So off of my score sheet that I'm looking at, we're going to have the length of the main beam, which is coming from the base of the antler here all the way around. This is the main beam, so pretend that these points weren't here. So you would have two big spikes. Those are the main beams. So we were going to get a score on the right side of that, and on the left side we're going to score the main beam. We're going to get a score of the first point, so these are technically the G1s, brow tines. These are the G2s, G3s. So we're going to get a score of that. Then we're going to get a score of the circumference. You get 4, based off this scoring sheet, you get 4 total scores of circumference. So it's going to be between the skull cap and the brow as 1, 2, 3, 4. Doesn't matter if there was 6 on this side, it would still be 1, 2, 3, 4. And those are our basic measurements. And then last one is going to be our inside spread. Then after that, we total it all up. And then I've got this one here just to show you. This is a humongous, kind of a non-typical. I'm going to show you how to measure some of the non-typical points, but we'll get to that after we measure this one. Because most people are going to have just the basic typical. Typical, if you'll know what that means, is you've got like your main frame 6 point, 8 point, 10 point. So that means if you were looking at the deer, it would be, this one's obviously a mainframe 8 because it's got 8 points. If I were looking at this deer, without the crazy non-typicals, this is a mainframe 8 because it looks like an 8 point. It's got the basic 4 on each side. We'll get to that in just a little bit. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to get with the scoring, this is where the wire comes in. I'm going to stretch this out, especially if you're using a wire. It's way easier. I'm going to do this right here to where you can see it. When I score with this wire, what I'm doing is I'm taking the end of this wire and I'm running. I've got it at the base of the antler on the back side. So if you can see that back side, I'm going following the middle of the antler on the side all the way down to the tip of the beam. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm running this wire. Again, the reason I use a wire is because you can't really bend a tape measure as good as you can bend a wire. But I also need a measurement, so I'm going to stretch the wire out to the tape measure. So I'm at the back bottom of the antler. All I'm doing is keeping this in place as I run down the back of this beam. And again, you can get as careful as you want to, or you could just get a basic, hey, I just want to know a ballpark of where my deer scored, and that's totally fine. You can do whatever. I'm just giving you kind of the basic of how you score a deer. Different scoring systems will have different measurements too. Okay, so that's at the end, so I'm just going to kind of put my fingernail there. We'll take it off. I'm going to go to my tape measure. I'm just going to stretch this out. And don't forget, I'm using eighths and eighths only because it's easier once we add everything up. All right, also you'll round to the nearest eighth, if that makes sense. So this is a really good example. This is 20 and a quarter. So that means I'm going to round to 20 and 3/8. I'm going to write that down. So that's the first measurement of the beam on the right side. Again, don't get mixed up. So I'm going to write it down. All right, I'm going to do the left side the exact same way. Left side the exact same way. I'm at the base of the burr here. I'm following the middle of the antler all the way to the tip of that beam. Put my fingernail there. Stretch it out on tape measure. Round to the nearest 8. So that's going to be an even 20 because it's a little past the 7/8. So I'm going to go up to 20. You tell me what you think this scores before I finish. See how close I get. I haven't scored this yet. I'm just going to guess one. I'm going to guess 116. That's where I'm going to hit it. 116. We'll see what that gets. All right, so there's the two main beams. Now, this is where the wire comes in handy. I've got to mark how I'm going to score these points. So going back to pretending there are no points on this, I've got to get a measurement from 1, 2, 3. So the way that I measure that is I'll run this wire flush to the antler. So again, main point. So I'm going to pretend that if I were to cut this point off and saw it off to where there was just a slick beam right here, where I would saw that off is where I want my mark to be. So you can see the back side of this. I'm running my wire on this side and on this side. And you can see when I put it flat on the right and left side, there's where my mark's going to be. So I'm going to mark where I would basically saw that point off to where it would just be flush with a beam. Okay? Hold that there. I use the pencil to mark, and you'll just hit right on that mark. Make sure I can see it. I'm going to go ahead and mark all of them while I'm here on this right side. You can see on that point, if I were to cut that off, it'd be about right there, and then it'd be just flush with that beam. So I'm going to hold it right there. Mark. Hold it right there. Mark. Okay, now we can score our points. Now, again, wire works really good if you've got kind of a crooked point because you want to give it as much as you can, obviously, because you want the most out of it. But this is where this comes in handy, is because if I've got a point that's pretty straight like this one, I can just run this one straight down the point, and then I've got my measurement. It's just a bit quicker than the wire. So, find my mark. There's my mark right there. This brow's a little bit crooked. If I were to, you see I did it on the back side here. I want to give this point as much as I can give it. On the front side, let's say that it was really built up here on the back, and I could get a different measurement on the front that gave this point more length. I'm allowed to do that. I go on the back side here simply because usually I get a little bit more out of that measurement, and I'm just used to doing that. But if you can get more out of the point, then you can do that. And again, I'm just making sure that I'm holding that wire as I work it up to the end of that point. I'm going to put it on my tape measure, and that is a 4 even on the first point. Now I can use this one. Well, again, this is an 1/8, so I'll know. See what I'm doing there? There's my mark right there. Run that down right on top of that point. That's going to be 6 even. If you can see that, it's 6 even. Again, it doesn't hit all the way to 6, but it's very close, so I round up to 6. Round up to the nearest 8. Length of the third point. I'll be able to use this tape measure again. So it didn't get close to the 6, but it's going to be 5 7/8. All right? Now, that's all the points. If it were to go, if this were 6 by 6, it'd go all the way down, and I just keep measuring the points. This is the main beam, so you don't worry about it, because I've already measured the main beam. So now I've got to get the circumference of those 4 points that I talked about. This is where this comes in handy. So what I'll do, I'm going to find the thickest place between the base of the antler, the burr, and then the brow tine. So about right in the middle, and I'm going to wrap that around, and that's going to be, if you can see that, that's going to be 3 6/8. So I'm going to write that down. So that's the first circumference. 3 6/8. Again, thickest point. There may be a buildup right here. It's a big knot that you could work off of. I'm going to go right in the middle. It's a little bit thicker right there, closer to the end. So that's still 3 2/8. All right, got 2 more measurements for the circumference. It's going to be 3 1/8. Now, on the last circumference that we'll get, whatever that fourth one is, if it's out here on the beam, they tell us to come halfway. So I usually just kind of give a guess because it's really not that big of a difference. So that's right at 7.5. So I'll be somewhere right in under 4. So let's see. It's about right there somewhere. And that's going to be 2 2/8. And that's it on the right side. Now we do the exact same thing on the left side. Again, take my wire. I've already got the length of the main beams, so now I just need to do my marks. Let's see. Here's mark number 1. Mark number 2. Mark number 3. Okay. I'm going to get a measurement of this first point with the wire. It's probably straight enough. I could get an accurate read from the tape measurement. Let's see. 3 and a little bit over, so 3 and 4/8 of the first point. You can do the same here because that's a pretty straight point. Seven on the dot. Five and 1/8. Now, I'll do circumference. Same thing as I did on the right side. So in between, that's going to be 3 and 6/8. Same here, got about halfway, 3 and 2/8. Three and, see what I'm doing there, 3 and 2/8. And I'm gonna go about midway on this best I can. 3 and, nope, excuse me, 2 and 2/8. So I have the basic measurements now. I want to do an inside spread. So what I like to do is turn it over, kind of like that. And I like to come on this side where, if that makes sense, the way that I had it on table, I just flip it up. If it sets, cool. If it doesn't, you can just turn it over like that. What I'm doing on the inside is I'm going inside to inside. And I'm getting the longest measurement I can. I'm getting the most I can out of it. So if I were to go from here to here, that's obviously not going to be as much as middle to middle or tip to tip. You know what I'm saying? So I like to make sure that I'm running my tape measure up kind of like this. I'll kind of run it up to see what the longest point is. So let's see. That's somewhere right in there. So 17 and 1/8 is inside spread. I'll write that down. All right. Now, let me show you guys how I total this up. Okay, hopefully you can see that, okay, on the video and on the screen. All right, so here's what I got. I've got length of the main beam, length of first point, second points, third points. Then I've got my circumference, 1, 2, 3, 4 for both sides. And then down here, I know it's dark because the way I printed it, I've got inside spread, okay? So I'm going to add whole numbers first. If you're like me and you hated math, I'm going to keep it simple. Whole numbers first, so I'm going to add 20, 4, 6, 5, 3, 3, 3, 2. Whatever total that is, I'm going to write that down. And then I'm going to add my 3, 7, 6, 2, 1, 2. Okay? So, after I add those, I'm going to see how many times that 8 will go into that total number, and then that'll be my fraction. Let me show you what that looks like. So 20, 24, 30, 35, because I'm adding these whole numbers first. So 20, 24, 30, 35, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46. So 46, I always have a little notepad. So 46 is that whole number right there. Then I'll add up the little fractions. So 3, 7 is 10, 16, 18, 19, 21. So I'm going to write that off to the side, 21. So 8 will go into 21 twice, all right? So 2 times. So I'm going to add 2 to 46. So it's going to be 48. And then my remainder left over is going to be my fraction. So 8 will go into 21 2 times because 8 times 3 is 24. So 8 times 2 is 16. I have 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I have 5 left over. So 48 and 5/8 is my total score for his right side. Again, I'm helping all the ones that hated math out, that hated math, because I was right there with you. So 48 and 5/8. Okay? Now, I'm going to do the exact same thing on this left side. All right? So, let's go 20, 23, 30. Nice. That's 30 there too. Yeah, so 20, 23, 30, 35. Dude, it's literally the exact same thing. No way. That's funny. 35, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46. The exact same as his right side. That's funny. All right, so 46. Now I'm going to add the whole number, or the little numbers above my fraction. So 4, 5, 11, 13, 15, 17. Okay? So write that down. 8 goes into 17 twice. I have 1 left over. Add my whole number to that, or add those 2 to that, 48. And then I have 1 left over, so 48 and 1/8 is the left side score. Now, what I have is my inside spread, which is 17 and, see if I can see that, 1/8. Now I total it up. So I will write right side is going to be 48 and 5/8. Left side is 48 and 1/8. Pen's terrible. Now, what I'll do is I will add 48 and 48 and 17. I've got 113, and then I do my fractions. 5, 6, 7. Total score is 113 and 7/8. Now, I was actually pretty close. I guessed 116. So, just a few off. I'm going to show you how to measure typical or non-typical points, okay? So, here is an absolute stud of a deer that is a non-typical on a lot of this junk down here, which means you'll get a typical score, mainframe 8, okay? Typical. And then you will add the non-typical points, which gives you your non-typical score, which non-typical means everything is being scored. Typical means you're kicking out the non-typical points. So here's what that looks like, right? This is a typical 8 because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on one side. Now, how do I determine which point is the typical side? Well, lucky for this guy who killed this deer, this point right here would be typical because I know that's the one that's leading off of this main beam. It's kind of hard to tell because this one leads up too, but this point and this point is coming off of the main point, if that makes sense, okay? So when I'm looking for the typical point, I want the ones closest to what would be normal. So if, let's say, this one right here was coming off of the beam more than this one was, well, if it was, then I would count this one. This one's actually a really good one to test yourself on because it's pretty hard to read because how like thick this is and how together they are. But again, I'm giving it to this one because I want the score to be as much as it can be. And then what I'll do, after I score this as a typical point, this point and this point, they're feeding off of this typical point, so it would be just like the main beam. In other words, I'm going to pretend I cut this off and this off at this point, if that makes sense. So to measure the non-typical points, I would take my rope, I would run it flush with that main point the best I could. Again, if I were to take this point and just see, oh man, I would cut that off right there, would run flush, I'm going to make that point right there. Or if I get more in the front, I'm going to run that point right there. Boom. And then I'm going to get a score of that. Same with this one. I'd run my cord around just like that, and they give me my score of the typical, or excuse me, of the non-typical. Same with this. This is a non-typical. So which one's my brow? Well, those are pretty split. I'm going to give him the one that's going to give him the most. That's going to be this one. I'll count that as a non-typical. Then what I'll do, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are my typical points. I'll score all of those, have the total score of typical, and then I'll add this one, this one, this one, because that's an inch for sure, this one, and this one. That's how you get a non-typical score. And that's how you score your deer. If this video is helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I encourage you to subscribe to keep up with our content. If I've missed anything or I was too confusing, please let me know. Leave a comment if you've got a question. And send us pictures. I mean, if you've got a deer that you haven't scored, we'd love to see the pictures, love to see the score. And again, it's not about the score. Just go out, have fun, enjoy the outdoors, and we'll catch you on the next one.